Yo people, welcome back to the YouTube channel. You already know what time it is. It's time for another video. Big up your damn selves in the building. Make sure you smash up the likes every single damn time and subscribe if you are new. We are joined by the man to do the most. It is Joey in the building. An absolute pleasure. Brother, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. Yourself?
Pleasure. Listen, bro, I always enjoy these link-ups. It's a shame to say that we can't be talking about this club in the most positive manner right now because we are going through a free fall. It feels like a mini crisis that's going on at the moment. And in this video today, it's all about Pochettino's almost, you know, when those people like... It demands in the transfer window for 3 players. I'm kind of like, I'm a little bit embarrassed here, but okay, I'll hear you out. He wants a centre-back, he wants a midfielder, he wants a striker, he wants a new spine. This team has come across maybe to him weak, not enough height, not enough physicality, we're getting bullied. First of all, do you agree with him that we need a new spine? I guess we could maybe include the goalkeeper in that. And how do you feel about going into January as a Chelsea fan after spending $1 billion and people looking at you and be like, so you need more players, do you? How do you feel about that?
Yes, we do. Do you know what? That's the mad thing, because only at the end did you mention a goalkeeper there. Yeah. And when you were mentioning those positions, I was thinking, goalkeeper? I know we're going to have a little look at Petrovic this weekend and see how he gets on. Yeah. But for my money, I really do think that maybe we're going to need a goalkeeper as well. And that's mad, isn't it? It's crazy to say we've spent £1 billion since Todd Bowley's ownership, and we still are so lackluster in a couple of areas, so thin in a couple of areas. But I'd pretty much agree. I think the centre-back, that's the only one where I'm like, look, could we do with a bit of depth if the likes of Thiago Silva and Trevor Chalobah at the end of this season move on? Yes, maybe we could do with one more in there. But how much do we then want to be going and spending on a centre-back? Like, I look at, Van der Ven at Spurs, they got him for, in today's market, relatively cheap money. And a lot of centre-backs that have come into clubs over the past few seasons I've actually looked at and thought, okay, that's not bad money that you've paid for those guys. But then you also look at the likes of a Harry Maguire, who cost 80 million, and as much as he's performing all right at the minute, has never lived up to that price tag. So I think you just need to tread very carefully. And let's be honest, we've got a record of overspending. So maybe centre-back is the one position in there when I look at the likes of Levi Colwell, Badiashile, Axel Disasi, and at the moment, obviously, Thiago Silva. And obviously Wesley Fofana, who we never even mention because he spent so long on the sidelines. I do sort of look at that and I say, well, if all of them are fit and available, even if we lose Silva and Chalobah, I think we're all right there, I do think we're all right. And then maybe we can look at Bashir Humphreys or someone like that, integrating him into the first team squad a little bit more than he has been. So that's definitely one. Midfield, again, mate, I was memed to death, for saying that Chelsea have one of the best midfields in the Premier League, and of recent weeks it doesn't look so. But on paper, and football is played on grass, on paper you look at Conor Gallagher, Caicedo and Enzo, and you think that's good depth in midfield. You also look at Romeo Lavia and you think that's good depth in midfield. But the problem I have here with all of the positions that are in question, is we can look and we can name individual by individual and go, well, hold on, they're really good names. Like, they're top players. You stick them next to a Rodri or next to a Declan Rice, and all of a sudden they're performing really well. And that is all good. But we lack one of the most important ingredients, and that is know-how, that is experience, that is top-level leadership skills. So as much as we can individualise every single player and say, well, they're a good player, tell me the leaders.
And that applies in both of these positions that you just mentioned, because I agree with you. I don't think we should be looking at a centre-back in terms of quality and in terms of numbers. I think the only thing I may look at and think, is there enough pace in those centre-back combinations? You look at Disasi, he's not the quickest. You look at Silva, not the quickest. Wesley Fofana is the one true centre-back that when we was able to bring him into the team, he was able to push our defensive line up the pitch and allow us to start recovering, transitions, because he's really good at defending in wide areas. But we made the mistake of signing a centre-back for a world record fee that had just come off a massive injury and had only played a couple of games for Leicester at the back end of the season, and then absolutely doubled down. And I remember when we signed him, we said, we're going to send him to the US for special medical checks and whatnot. We haven't seen him. And I think if Pochettino is going to press from the front and be compact in the way that he has his team pushing forward and trying to retrieve the ball in higher areas, he's going to need to play a higher line like Liverpool, and therefore he's going to need some pace. So it begs the question with the defence starting off before we get to midfield, because I know the midfield is 100%. I know where you're going to go with this, and I agree. But I'm still embarrassed. Disasi, we just signed him in the summer. if we need quick, strong, fast centre-backs, then what are we doing here? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. He was in charge when those players came in. Do you think we signed players with Pochettino's tenure in mind in the summer? Like, do you think he gave the green light on these signers, or were they more of a board recruitment team led? I think that clearly they were, but like, do you feel like Poch gave the green light, or was he just almost too weak in just saying, yeah, I'll take whatever?
Well, I think ultimately the reason that Pochettino digressed so much for so long after being offered the job was because I think my assumption would be that Pochettino pretty much knew that this is an ownership that are probably going to want to call a lot of the shots and maybe aren't best placed to do so given their lack of experience in football altogether, let alone Premier League football, let alone, top level European football. So I think that was maybe one of the reasons Pochettino was hesitant. And I think that when the signings are coming in, Pochettino probably isn't able to look at the actual player profile. We hear Jurgen Klopp, don't we, speaking about player profiles and how he's looked into the actual background life and the family life of certain players, and he looks at how they are as individuals and then determines whether or not they can suit his system. And I don't think that's something that Pochettino had the luxury to do when we were bringing these players in left, right and centre. And I also think Pochettino banked on a few more names being gone as well. The only one that I could really say I feel like Pochettino was the man to give the go-ahead on was Cole Palmer. Because Cole Palmer, we did hear when he was signed that the name was offered to Pochettino. They said, there's a deal to be done here. We can do it. Do you want him? And Pochettino apparently at the time said, yeah. So I also think as well that when we're looking at sort of leadership skills and courage from our players, they're not grown overnight, these abilities. They are things that take a lot of time to come through. I remember Frank Lampard being a very shy, reserved player in his younger years, and then all of a sudden, when he was in his later years and he had accomplished a bit more, he was more of a leader in that team. And the same goes for many players. So I think we'll develop it over time. But to answer your question, no, I don't really think that Pochettino was the man giving the shots here. And I think that you can sort of inadvertently take that from his words in terms of him now saying, I need to be the one that's in charge of this recruitment. The only problem is this. If, for example, Pochettino was to leave, then what are we going to? Are we going to give him the treasure chest to go and spend, and then get a load of players that maybe stylistically suit a system that he wants to play, but may well not be a fit for the next guy coming in? So that's the
why there's a balance, isn't it?
That's the dilemma. That's the dilemma. The main position though we're speaking about here would be a striker. We do need to get someone that can put the ball in the back of the net. But as you well know, it's a dying breed in modern day football, isn't it?
I mean, Vlahovic was linked in the summer, and I didn't want him because I didn't trust his fitness and his all-round game. But he's injured. He's been injured for Juventus a lot at the start of this season, so he's not been available. And we've already got enough potentially injury-stricken, injury-prone players as it is glittered throughout our team that is decimating our team constantly and making us have to chop and change. We don't need another. And I think because of that threat of potentially signing on 8-year contracts at a minimum, which this board have become accustomed to for amortization, I was very worried about signing a player like Vlahovic with those injury concerns on an 8-year contract, locking him in, and then potentially missing out on other forwards in the future. Now we're linked with Osimhen, now we're linked with Tony. Now, these guys are going to be expensive, but I agree. I think if there's any position in this team that are 100%, there is no question we need someone, even to balance out the profile. You've got Jackson and Broja, two very young raw forward. Then you've got Datro Fofana out on loan at Union Berlin, and you got Washington. You've got loads of young strikers that haven't fulfilled their potential yet, haven't shown that they can lead a line for a club of this magnitude. You need to balance it out. I remember Giroud with Tammy Abraham, perfect balance. You've seen Aguero with Jesus, perfect balance. You need to have, even Azpilicueta, Reece James, different position, but perfect balance. You need to have that counterbalance. So that's the position where I'm like, do you know what? We haven't splashed there. We can legislate for it. But the market, like you said, is not great. So we have to be very careful to get this completely right. But I know in midfield, you was speaking about Rodri and Rice. Caicedo doesn't look like a sitter in terms of the way that he approaches tackles and he gets himself quite front-footed and quite involved, and maybe will leave a gap or two. But Lavia and Okachuku are there. Do we just have to bite the bullet and say, we've spent a whole heap of money on Lavia, we've not seen him once? Leslie Okachuku, when he's come in, he's looked decent. Do we just have to just bite the bullet and say we're gonna develop and nurture these players, and hopefully they become the sixes that we want them to become.
I think we do, but I don't think there's anything wrong in the meantime of bringing a couple of older heads in there to steady the ship. Maybe it hasn't turned out the best, especially when you look at the transfer fee, but you can't deny that Man United did do that last season when they brought Casemiro in. Yeah. So obviously if we could do one that made better business sense, which being that we support Chelsea and we know how the club operate himself, is unlikely we will. Yeah. But if we could do that, that might be a good method there. Now you speak about Ogachukwu coming into lineup. He's looked decent when he's come in. Yeah. He hasn't looked a level above anyone he's been around. You know what I mean? And our decent now is mid-table, isn't it? So has he looked like he's going to be someone that can transform us? Not at this moment in time, no. And I feel like with young players, the problem we're in as a club, right, is we want to give them time, right? But then at the same time, we have been starved of success now for so long. We have been beaten into submission now for so long with the results that have been going against us that we as a fan base don't generally have that time to be able to give people. So we're stuck between a rock and a hard place here. But I do think that a lot of these guys will come good. Like I look at a lot of these guys, even Caicedo, you rightly so maybe gave a little bit of constructive criticism to there. I actually think Caicedo will come good in time.
Yeah, I think so too.
Just at the second, it's just a hot mess at Stamford Bridge.
So this is where it's going to get difficult, right? So you're telling me, right, goalkeeper, centre mid, and striker. I saw your video on Gallagher. We know that Gallagher's been linked with a move away. Kind of contradicts the fact that Pochettino wants to keep him, has made his team pretty much about him a little bit, and they look for pure profit. You're going to have to sell some players, Jerry, because we can't keep a bolstered squad like we did last year. We had too many players, and then it became a situation where people are sitting outside tactical rooms and playing Nintendo DS when they should be trying to get into the room to try and find out what's going on and get some information. Too many players. So 4 centre-backs in a back 4 makes sense to me. So you're going to have to sell 3 centre-backs. We know Chalobah's on the way out.
Yep.
Is it going to be a Silva? Is it going to be a Disasi? Is it going to be a Fofana? If you're going to get an extra centre-back in, which I don't think Pochettino really needs. I think you disagree as well. Who would be those centre-backs to go?
So I think Chalobah, the writing's on the wall, as unfortunate as that is, because I think that, selling off the DNA of our club is never a good thing when we're trying to cling on to the last sort of little bits from that successful period. And Trevor Chalobah was a man that was there, understands the club, the culture. So it's a shame, but he will move on. We know how this ownership's working now. 100% profit, he'll move on. Yeah. Thiago Silva, Father Time's undefeated. So at the end of the day, mate, like Thiago Silva can't go on forever, and we're unrealistic to hinge so much of our defensive hopes on him when at the end of the day he will be 40 next season, and maybe he's rightly so earned himself a nice little move back to Brazil, and to continue his playing career there. So then for me, it becomes out of Wesley Fofana and Axel Disasi. And it's a really, really hard one to pick, right? Because Axel Disasi has shown so far, fitness-wise, that he's been all right. And Wesley Fofana's fitness record has pretty much been abysmal. We flew him over to see specialists in America. Yeah. That didn't work too well for us, did it? So clearly the fitness record of Wesley Fofana hasn't been a good one. Yeah. And for that reason, it makes me lean towards maybe saying, okay, Wesley Fofana should be the one that goes. Yeah. But the problem here is, he's looked better when he has played than Axel Disasi has. Yeah. He's looked more athletic.
His potential is much higher.
Much higher. Obviously younger, I think, just slightly so. So obviously Fofana would be the one that I think in an ideal world, I would keep. Yeah. But in a realistic world, because of the injury records, you can be the greatest footballer in the world, but if you never step foot on a pitch, are you really? Does it matter? So thinking a realistic world, I keep Disasi and maybe sell Fofana, which is crazy because we won't get anywhere near that price tag we paid for him.
Yeah. Now in midfield, I'm gonna really make it difficult because we play a 4-2-3-1. We're talking about signing a 6. We have Caicedo, we have Enzo, we have Leslie Okochoku. So you have space for one more position now. You could say 4 players for 2 positions. That's fair. But then ahead of them, you have Gallagher, Nkuku, and potentially Palmer and Chukwuemeka all competing for 10. Palmer we can shove out to the right, but still three players for one spot. It doesn't make sense. So someone's got to leave in this midfield. For you, are you going to bring Gallagher back into the pivot and move an Okochoku? Are you going to... What are you going to do?
Well, the key thing here is I really rate Cesar Casada as well. Yeah. And I think that when we speak about height and physical presence as well, he could be a man that we won't have to pay a penny for. Yeah. We've already paid it. Yeah. And could come in and...
20 million for him.
Yeah, exactly. He could be someone that could come in and do a good job in our midfield at some point. And I think we could actually use him right now, But if I was going to have to get rid of any, the first thing I would say here is... Nkunku hasn't always played in the number 10. He's played on the wing a lot of the time as well, and a short amount of time at number 9.
Yeah.
So I'd sort of take him out of that and then say that we've got Chukwuemeka there.
Yeah.
And we've got Conor Gallagher there.
Yeah.
Obviously, the midfield sort of stays as it is. If I had to get rid of any of them, again, it's massively harsh. It's not saying I want to get rid of these players, but maybe an Andre Santos on loan I'd send off because he hasn't gone to Nottingham Forest and been able to get in the first team, although I was impressed by him in pre-season.
Yeah.
Ugochukwu's a guy that actually we brought in for quite a lot of money, about 35 million or something for Ugochukwu, isn't it?
Like 27.5 and an add-on.
Okay, yeah. We pretty won't have to pay any of them add-ons.
Add it all up, I think we spent a good 100 million on at least Andre Santos, Leslie Ugochukwu, Chukwuemeka and Cassidy. Like when you add, I think that's minimum 85 million, 80 million.
Now,
so, yeah.
Chukwuemeka's a player that I really rate. And I think he was a rare shining light at times last season. So I definitely want to keep hold of him. I suppose the one I'd have to go with, if I had to get rid of one out of those players I've just named, with the potential that we've seen from Romeo Lavia, and of course he needs to live up to it, but it'd probably have to be Ugochukwu.
The height. So it's mad, isn't it? And then up front, I mean...
Bin them all off. No, I'm joking.
Can you have 3 strikers for one position, especially when Nkunku becomes your emergency striker?
Yeah.
I think one of them... If we're going to bring in a big name and they're not going to get injured, I think one of them probably has to go between Jackson or Broja because they're not going to see the pitch otherwise. So who would that be for you?
Again, like I try to answer questions without a business hat on and trying to just think from the footballing side of things. And from the footballing side of things, I think it's a 50-50 really. Although I would back Amanda Broja because he'd come through the academy. Yeah. Since the injury, he hasn't showed me any more than Jackson. He's probably showed me less than Jackson in a way. Jackson's massively wasteful, and I don't think he's the future number 9 up in our club. But what I would say is, if I sort of delved into the business side of things ever so slightly. Yeah. Then maybe I'm going to look at that and go, okay, we need to balance the books and we need to somehow raise funds to bring new players in. We know the amortization's now gone, so what we're paying is going to need to be not paid up front, but over 5 years or so. Yeah. And for that reason, we'd probably sell Amanda Broja.
Yeah. Pure profit, isn't it?
Pure profit. And I think if a Fulham were to come in for him, a West Ham, someone like that, maybe a Brentford, someone that need a number 9. Yeah. I think if any of these clubs were to come in for him, we're probably looking at upwards of 30 million for Amanda Broja. So. Yeah. Well,
there you are. I mean, that's not easy to do. Obviously, Maatsen, I think by default is going because we don't need 3 left backs.
It's a shame, man. He was like Thierry Henry in pre-season, wasn't he?
100%. Which he's just going to fall by the wayside, unfortunately. Yeah. But the overriding consensus is that Cobham is going to get cuts. That's basically Cobham is going to see cuts. So it's a shame, but pure profit is the name of the game, it seems. And hopefully, you would hope with those additions, as much as it makes me unwell, that new spine potentially, if they've picked out the experience, the leadership, the quality that you're talking about, no more 16-year-old Brazilians, no more young players, we've got enough of those, no more Mortais in over 10 years, 28, 27-year-old linchpins, experienced top players in those positions, we might have our Chelsea back. You never know.
Let's hope so, mate. Let's hope so.
Joey, it's been a pleasure, bro. Let the people know where to find you, man.
Yeah, the Joey Knight podcast, obviously on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, pretty much everything, to be honest. So head over there and subscribe to my channel, and you can see alongside Matisse's brilliant content that's coming out all the time, a little bit of what I've got to say for myself.
There you go. Guys, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you smash up the likes as always. And I'll see you guys next time. In a bit, people. Peace.